I would like to welcome all of you to our panel discussion on digital sovereignty. We will hear from 4 excellent speakers in a minute, and I will introduce them one by one later on. My name is Hoppe. I'm a Handelsblatt correspondent based in Berlin. Just until recently, I've been based in Brussels covering EU affairs, so also a lot of the work that has been done on the digital agenda. So digital sovereignty, or even technological sovereignty, has recently become one of the favorite buzzwords. For one example, in our political guidelines, Commission President Ursula von der Leyen pledged to achieve technological sovereignty in some critical areas. She mentioned quantum computing, for example, artificial intelligence and chip technology, among others. Just recently, French President Emmanuel Macron warned, if we don't build our own champions in all areas, our choices will be dictated by others. And indeed, there's a reason why European leaders are pushing to increase Europe's independence in certain technologies. The US administration, every one of you has probably followed that in the news, has targeted prominent Chinese providers, Huawei in the first place, then TikTok and WeChat recently. It seems that both powers are increasingly extending their rivalry to the tech sphere. Some experts are already warning that Europe will have to choose basically between those camps that become increasingly adverse. So we will discuss in the next 40 minutes whether that decision will be inevitable given the lack of big tech companies in Europe, and whether it's a good idea to go that way, given there might be some downsides, some temptation to go protectionist. Just to illustrate the lack of heavyweight in the tech industry, the market cap of the US tech industry, the tech sector, recently for the first time exceeded the entire market capitalization of the entire European stock market, according to Bank of America. So, and I would also like to invite you in the audience to give your views on the topics we are discussing about. You can use the chat just next to the screen, and I will try to address. We don't have much time, but I will try to address a few of them later on. We will particularly talk about one sphere of digital sovereignty, which is cloud computing. German minister, at the moment it's dominated basically by US providers such as Amazon, Microsoft or Google. Some Chinese companies are pushing into it. And the German Minister of Economic Affairs, Peter Altmaier, therefore initiated an effort to developing a European platform to store and manage data in the cloud in order to be able to claim digital sovereignty in this critical sphere. This GAIAX, and our first speaker, has spent much of the last year working on it to bring the many pieces of the puzzles together. So Marco Alexander Breit is the head of the task force on artificial intelligence in the German Ministry of Economic Affairs and a long-time confidant of Minister Altmaier. We worked with him before in the Chancellery. So Marco, how are you progressing with your giant puzzle? Apparently you haven't given up yet on competing with the big tech companies from abroad.
Yes, thank you, first of all, for inviting me today and giving me the opportunity to talk about what we are doing. We are making good progress, but I will come back to that later. I would like to introduce you to our idea of digital sovereignty, because I think the idea of digital sovereignty has always been there, but the importance and the urgency of the matter has been underlined by recent events, and especially the decoupling between China and the United States is looming above all the world, and this decoupling has obvious effects on third countries and on companies from these third countries. It even has effects, detrimental effects, on the companies of the countries involved. As you have heard, Apple, for example, when it came to the Huawei decision, for example, Tencent, the TikTok issue, for example, the Adobe incident that has been looming over Venezuela. Tech is now a weapon. So what we need to do in Europe is we need to avoid being pulverized between these two giants, the United States and China. And there's only one way, in my opinion, and in the opinion of a lot of other people that relate to that issue, is we need to find ourselves firm footing. The firm footing will be based on sovereignty, because sovereignty gives you the option to choose and gives you the option to make a decision. because if you are sovereign, then you are in the position to decide something for yourself, and you are not only being pushed around by others. So the thing is not that we want to do everything by ourselves. The thing is we want to be able to do everything by ourselves, because we never know what's going to happen between these two giants. And this is, as you mentioned, Till, this is not just cloud, what GAIAX is addressing. It's 5G, it's 6G, it's microelectronics, for example. And there's a lot of other things going on where we find ourselves in this situation where Europe needs to stand on its own and needs to find firm footing. The second thing why digital sovereignty is so important right now is that we see that domain knowledge of the countries and of the companies in the European countries is so important for our welfare and for societal welfare and economical welfare. But what we see too is that this knowledge is lying in the hands of others. We see that, for example, the huge cloud companies, most of them are either United States based or they are China based. What does that mean? If decoupling happens and if this tech struggle is going more intense, then the knowledge of the domains and the knowledge of the industry players is actually in the hands of combatants. So we want to see that there is a cloud and edge-based infrastructure that gives us the opportunity to again stand on our own, but gives you the freedom of choice. And if there's something going wrong in that whole data sphere all over the world, then there's still that safe haven in Europe. It does not mean that that the American companies or the Chinese companies are left out of the business or left out of GAIAX. Especially in GAIAX, we try to work with them, and they embrace the opportunity and they work with us, be it companies from the United States, be it companies from other countries. So what we see, and this is the third layer of digital sovereignty I want to address in my few remarks, is what we see too in Europe is that we give a lot of money, especially public money, into the development of small and medium enterprises, and especially small startups that have data applications or, for example, AI services, and they're coming from universities, they're coming from big company builders, but they're in the end, they always face the same challenge. Challenge is they have a good service or a good AI application or a good data application, but they're lacking the data. And what they need to improve their product is the access to data. And if they want to have the access to data, they are actually kind of forced to sell themselves to one of the 5 or 6 huge players that you mentioned already. And this is a very bad situation, because for us, first of all, it's taxpayers' money that's just going abroad. The second thing is, it's not only taxpayers' money, it's knowledge, people, mind, and ideas that going abroad after them. And the third thing is, if we want Europe to define regulations and to define rules on how data and AI should be value-based, should be human-centric, and all these things, we actually should have the opportunity to make these ideas scale up without selling them to third countries or companies of third countries. So in the end, GAIAX addresses all these 3 things. GAIAX, it is in a nutshell the joint effort of a lot of providers and users to make a mutual, respectful system of interoperable data, AI, cloud, and edge services. So what we are doing is we kind of coin phrase that a virtual hyperscaler. It's not a competitor to AWS, not a competitor to Alibaba. We try to connect the providers that we have, plus the users that we have, plus the medium players that we have, and small and medium enterprises and startups and universities together on a shared infrastructure. That infrastructure is based on European regulation, it's based on European values, and it's based on a joint understanding of rules and regulations. And on that infrastructure, we want to slowly progress into something like a vital and lubricant big ecosystem for AI applications, for data applications, for software as a service, for example, for platforms as a service, but all based on that interoperable infrastructure. That gives you the freedom of choice. Do you want to go to that provider? Do you want to go to this provider? Do you want to work together with the Danish small and medium enterprise or with the Portuguese startup? Or do you want to work together with an American cloud provider or maybe a French one because you want to make sure that the data is stored and processed in Europe? It doesn't matter. GAIAX gives you the opportunity to make the freedom of choice, gives you the opportunity to choose. So that's the first layer. The second layer GAIAX addresses is that we want this, this data sovereignty issue to be combined with the data availability issue. A lot of data is out there right now, but the innovative potential is not being used right now. So what we do on GAIAX is we try to set up a set of rules that gives you the opportunity to share data, to process data together, to exchange data, and to make business based on data in a set within a framework of rules, of responsibilities, and of clear mandated, a clear system of mutual respect and benefit. So this is what we are addressing on the second layer. And the third layer is, obviously, if the infrastructure is there, and if we can make a lot of people work together on GAIAX, then you have this ecosystem and you have this huge platform for services and applications. And when I was referring to the problem that we have so many small, medium-sized offerings, but they need to scale up, GAIAX gives them the opportunity to scale up. Because if you're a member of the GAIAX network, from 1 second to the next, you have access to all of Europe based on the same set of regulations, based on the same set of rules, and you have, as we are going to work together with the companies from third countries, you have the access to the whole world via that GAIAX network. So there's no need to scale on your own. There's no need to sell your company or your idea to a bigger or larger player that has access to the data. And thus, it gives the opportunity to be self-deciding, sovereign company in the beginning of your economic life. And this, in the end, is the main idea and how the digital sovereignty effort combines with GAIAX. GAIAX is, as you said, a German initiative. It has been a German initiative. By now, we are talking together with the French, with a lot of European companies and countries. We have a lot of support from other European member states, from the Commission, because from the very beginning, we made clear this is not a German thing, this is not a French thing, this is something we try to do for Europe. But in the end, we're not doing it for Europe, we try to do it for the whole of the world, because rule-based set of regulations and data rules is good for everyone that's working with data worldwide. Thank you.
Thank you, Marco, for those very concise remarks. Actually managed to put to explain the concept of GAIAX and the idea behind digital sovereignty within 5 minutes. That's already an achievement. I would now like to ask Eline Chivot to react on it. I know she's not that convinced of the idea that digital sovereignty might be the solution to all European problems in the tech sphere. Eline is a senior policy analyst at the Center for Data Innovation and based in Brussels. She has been following the efforts for quite some while. So Eline, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Till, and thank you, OPP and BITKOM, for having me today in such good company. I'd like to start by saying that I'm European, but I'm also French. That means that at school and culturally, I grew up to know digital sovereignty, or sovereignty at least, is an important concept, as you might guess, judging our history. So I find it naturally a very appealing concept, but being French also means that I enjoy being a contrarian or a gainsayer just for the sake of the argument, because we folks find it intellectually stimulating. So more seriously, I'd like to point out that there are limits to the concept, and especially in the way it's being framed and implemented. The narrative has gone nuclear among policymakers in Brussels and in some member states, including France and Germany. And what it really is it's a push of the EU to become an assertive regulatory superpower, and some call it even the Brussels effect. And that's being done by rolling out a toolbox of strategies and policies to regulate emerging technologies. You have the industrial strategy, the data strategy at the heart of it, competition and antitrust policies, digital taxation, and the development of a legal framework for AI. But some raise legitimate concerns over how this will be counterproductive and will not make the EU the global architect of power that it wants to be and the leader in the digital economy that it wants to be. And the EU does make a good job at making rules compared to playing politics. And a narrative ending up as a paper tiger comfortable to press a country like China. And it's not because rules are written in the EU that it benefits its tech sector. It's not because the EU has tried that strategy with the GDPR that they should try to replicate it and apply it the same way to all other areas. Now, I hear that the EU sees itself caught between China and the US, and so sovereignty is a way to exist within that space, not by building large tech companies, but by regulating them and by increasing domestic control over technology. But in turn, some worry these measures make new technologies harder and more expensive to use, and that it will create serious costs on both EU and non-EU companies and consumers. So what we should keep in mind is that tech regulation is not an appropriate substitute for innovation. It won't be enough to ensure that we can access products and services developed around our values. And sovereignty will not put Europe in a stronger footing in the digital economy, which is by a sense collaborative with things like data localization. What could enable that is cooperation. We need that more than a focus on regulation. Otherwise, we're going to be running with handcuffs instead. We're unlikely to have the capabilities and the funding we need to lead with autonomy in the digital economy. If no one wants to invest in you, and if your rules disincentivize others to do business with you, I wonder what's the point of sovereignty. There's this disconnect between European aspirations and what it needs. I'm hearing Europe's Internal Market Commissioner, Thierry Breton, repeatedly saying that all platforms need to process and store their data in Europe because these data belong to Europe. He also said on French television that the Chinese and the Russians do it, so we should do it too. Now, I'm doubting whether we'd like to actually see Europe act as a follower of these two amazing models of firewalls that China and Russia propose. So overall, digital sovereignty, the way it materializes, for instance, with data localizations, that contradicts a commitment of the EU to free trade, and that sort of overreach might advertise or expose some of our strategic shortcomings, especially in trade policy. It might also undermine the influence of the values and principles that we want to really promote, and it will carry less weight if we act in isolation. So at least the EU has ambitious goals, and it's really talking real matters when so many others are missing in action. But what it needs is really we need to solve our existential crisis to gain digital self-confidence and going for something more like a digital allied sovereignty. And just to recall this proverb, if you want to go fast, go together. If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And I'm happy to elaborate further on that. And if I may still react on GAIAX and what was said, well, I'm glad to hear Marco say that it's not about the EU doing everything by itself, although I did read Mrs. Angela Merkel said something like that a few months ago. The questions I'd like to raise regarding a project like GAIAX would be, how do you plan to convince stakeholders to give thrust to that project? And US foreign providers do have to comply with EU laws on data protection, and they do deliver secure services to many European companies. So what is the problem exactly that we're trying to solve by building an alternative infrastructure? Why do we think we can do it better, cheaper, maybe more energy efficient than other competitors? And if you look at the most important cloud providers on the EU market this year, you have Microsoft, Amazon, IBM, Salesforce, and Google. And European challenges are OVH, Orange, Deutsche Telekom. Renault to work with cloud recently. So if we're talking about freedom of choice, some argue that European businesses will continue to use US-based cloud providers because they offer economies of scales and capabilities that will not necessarily be available. And in a recession, I'm not sure they will want to do new solutions and take risks with something that is new and still lack specifics. Finally, to conclude on GAIAX, I see the project does foreclose non-EU companies, scrapping voting rights and reducing access to decision-making. Monsieur Breton said there's nothing protectionist about this, but it does definitely sound like, or it does resemble something like that. So I'll leave it to that. And I look forward to the discussion and hearing the other great panelists' points of view on this. Thank you.
Thanks, Eline. That was quite inspiring. We'll come back to the issue whether China and Russia should serve as a model for the European Union when we ask Susanne Dehmel to talk about it. But first, let me turn to Renee Boost, who's a senior director at the IT consultancy Gartner. And he might be able to say something substantial on how the project GAIAX and the concept is seen in the market, whether how much acceptance it might get from other companies, and and what's still lacking, basically. Renee, please.
Yeah, thank you, Till, and also thank you for having me. Well, the thing is, when clients are reaching out to us and asking us about GAIAX, which are quite a lot, they first of all ask us, okay, what is this all about? Right? So what is the value proposition behind GAIAX? Why should we look into GAIAX? And in fact, it's not easy to, I think it's not easy to describe or to define. And as Marco also tried it in the beginning, it's not easy to put this into just one simple sentence. And I think this is also the one of the difficulties the foundation has right now, which has been created 2-3 months ago. So it's not in the hands of the government anymore. It's now in the hands of the GAIAX Foundation, in my opinion. And the GAIAX Foundation has to clearly lay out a value proposition why end-user organizations should use GAIAX and should not go directly, for example, to US American or Chinese providers. So the question is why and the purpose behind GAIAX. For sure, digital sovereignty, technology sovereignty is an important thing. Yeah, I agree with that, because it's true that when it comes to specifically the cloud infrastructure as a service market, the top 5 providers are from the United States or from China. So there is not a single European cloud infrastructure provider who can compete against them right now. Of course, if you are just looking at this pure infrastructure level, so if you're talking about compute, storage, and network, I wouldn't say it's an easy game, but there are a lot of providers here in the European market. But if you are going, level higher, so if you're looking at the platform services market, for example, if you're looking for real innovation, if you're looking for services, for convenience to build net new business models, if you want to digitize easier and if you don't want to build everything from scratch, then you don't have a choice here in Europe. And this is the issue. And this is why end-user organizations can only go to non-European technology and service providers. The other thing, so I believe we should look at this from the end-user perspective mainly, because of course, technology and service providers are interested in GAIAX for sure, because it's another market. It's a kind of a marketplace use to reach out to new prospects, new customers, right? So basically it's a go-to-market model for them. But the main question is, what is in for the end users, and especially for mid-sized organizations? If we are looking at the European market in general, 99% of organizations are small and mid-sized companies, right? And first of all, their maturity, their digital their digital maturity, their cloud maturity is not very mature, to be honest. So there is still a lot of education that needs to be done. And the question is, if the GAIAX Foundation is capable of doing this education, right? So, and to be honest, the other providers in the market, the American providers, the Chinese providers, are doing exactly this education, why cloud is necessary, for example, for digitization. So, and the other point is, I think, also very important, is the time to market, so the speed. And again, this is not in the hands of the governments anymore, it's in the hands of the foundation. So I'm not 100% sure how far, and perhaps Marco can elaborate on that a little bit more, how far the project is right now. Is it 10%? Is it 20%? Is it 30%? What we have learned during the press conference in May, I think that they said something that they want to be ready in early 2021. So with basic infrastructure, with some ready projects. or pilot projects. The question is, how fast can they really be, also compared to how ready the other cloud providers are already, right? So they have ready platforms, they have ready infrastructures, they are innovating on a very, very fast speed. So if you look at how many new services and applications they are bringing to the market on a quarterly basis, sometimes on a monthly basis, this is enormous. And the question is if GAIAX is capable of doing that. Of course, if they also want to do that, this is another question, right? But I think in general, so the bottom line is, I think it's good to have an alternative infrastructure here in Europe, so that startups and other organizations who are looking for more local infrastructure, local platforms, have a choice.
Thank you, René. Maybe, Susanne, if you don't mind, I would like to ask Marco to just react, because René basically posed some direct questions on state of play. Maybe you can just go and answer them, Marco. Thank you.
I would actually prefer Susanne Dehmel to speak first, because otherwise I'm going to answer this question for 30 minutes.
And 4. Yeah, okay.
Should I start?
Yeah, please.
Okay.
But try it in 4.
Okay, then. Okay, first of all, end user perspective is highly important to us. From the very beginning, GAIAX had 3 work streams. The first one was exactly this. It is end user centric. It means the first work stream is now comprising, I think, 7 or 9 domains. It varies a bit because sometimes the domains get forced together, again, not forced together, but being made to work together. It's, for example, IoT, it's health, it's energy, there is public sector, there is smart living. So in these domains, the user perspective is going right into the process that's driving GAIAX. We have more than 330 companies right now working on GAIAX, with a lot of people within these companies, and these 330 companies, only about 30 or 40 of them are providers. The other ones users. We have large-scale users like Deutsche Börse, we have or BMW that you know, or Électricité de France. We have small-scale users, we have startups. Everybody's involved in that network. So I'm not worried about our user centricity, because this came from the very beginning. The second thing is time to market. As you said, we want to be able to bring the first products and services on GAIAX to the world in the beginning of 2021. We actually hope for the end of 2020, but it might take a bit longer, because a lot of these things, they rely on federated services and they need to be developed. But nevertheless, we are very strongly committed to 2021, not only for the basic applications, but for use cases and data applications running on GAIAX. On the other thing, as the amount of investment that you, René, mentioned is, you know, this is a question that always is asked, and the answer is pretty simple, but it needs you to think around a bit. The investment into the cloud and services, platform as a service services, and software as a service services, obviously need to be done not by the GAIAX entity, they need to be done by the companies that are involved in the process, which is Deutsche Telekom, SAP, OVH, you mentioned a lot of them. And in the end, whatever they do combined is like the effort that's going to be spent on GAIAX. And even Microsoft, AWS, Google are part of our technical committees right now. So they are not competitors to GAIAX. Actually, it's kind of just not a second alternative infrastructure, Eline. It's more like we combine them and their silos to each other and to third countries, European providers, and all the other things. That means you can just be a customer of AWS, but you can use the OVH services on your AWS data. And you can go to Siemens and work with their data, but you can go to Bosch with the same data, and as long as they're shared on the GAIAX infrastructure, you can combine them with each other. So this is not being a competitor to the infrastructures that are there already. It combines them and it makes links between them. And this is why we are not actually afraid of competition from AWS and their huge innovative power, because the innovative power feeds the system of GAIAX too. But on the other hand, the innovative power of the European companies, of the small and medium enterprises, of the customers, they feed again, for example, the business models and the businesses of the huge providers. So in the end, this is why you ask, why should the American stakeholders be part of it? Because first of all, they make money out of it. The second thing is they broaden their customer base. And the third thing is there's a huge network going on for data sovereignty, having choice and data availability. If you're not part of that and you're the only one, then you're doomed.
Thanks, Marco. That was interesting. Now, Susanne, sorry again for letting you wait. It will be interesting to hear what you have to say on it, because Susanne Dehmel, she's a member of the management team of BITKOM, the German IT Industry Association, and has been closely involved in the GAIAX project. But at the same time, she knows the concerns of non-European companies about this concrete project, but also about the whole debate about digital sovereignty. So it will be interesting to hear, Susanne, what you think about it. Are you more on the Eline side, or are you basically fine with what Marco just said?
Well, both of them. Thank you, Till. Maybe I first start with what is our understanding at BITKOM of digital sovereignty, because we work on that notion since 2015, I think. So we were rethinking it every now and again, considering the global situation. But I think it's really important, and I think that Marco's understanding too, that digital sovereignty doesn't mean that we want to do everything on our own and that we want to reach digital autarky, so to say, especially for the economy. I think that's not an option. But what we need to achieve is to have the ability to build key technologies ourselves and to assess them ourselves and to negotiate with partners from around the world on the same level about the conditions that we build under which we use the technology. And we have to be clear what are our well, I think values is sometimes a bit difficult in with regards to technology, because technology is a tool. So, but you have to set conditions under which you want to use certain technologies, which is just to say that we want to use a trustworthy and safe infrastructure. We want to be able to switch our data from one service to the next if we think there's a better offer there, or that we want to be sure that our data is only used in the way that we have negotiated beforehand and that we have given our consent. So I think the regulatory side is only a very small side of things. So the key goal is to have the technological abilities to be a player on the globe in the global competition on technology. And we all know that, as we have heard before, in cloud services, there are a lot of cloud services in Europe, but the big ones with the really attractive offers at the moment for many, they don't come from Europe. So I think it's the right, it's a good project. To try and strengthen the European cloud landscape and also not only the cloud infrastructure, but also our abilities in data analyzing and data using data for new services by setting up a system of rules and cooperation that gives us the opportunity to further develop our own the services that come from Europe, but also to cooperate and learn from international services. And I think it's important not to make this a protectionist project. I think we, as BITKOM, have always seen the whole ICT industry. We always wanted to set the ground good conditions for the ICT industry as a whole in Europe. And I think so. But we at the same time we have to make clear what are the prerequisites that we need for a trustworthy cooperation within the ecosystem, and therefore there need to be certain standards that we agree upon with regards to security, to interoperability, data portability, also data sovereignty. The big challenge, in my view, is the complexity. How can you make something as good as one player, as Eline said before? If you want to be fast, go alone. But so we won't be as fast probably as big players on their own. But maybe on the long run, if we find ways to cope with the complexity and with the number of players, and also that, of course, there are a number of different interests with it, that go into this project, and a lot of expectations from all different sides. So it's a difficult task to make this work, but if we succeed, I think it's a big chance for Europe.
But you mentioned complexity. That's a familiar issue to, especially to people in Brussels who always deal with how to coordinate, get 27 member states to act together. And if you then add like hundreds of companies who will get involved, I don't envy Marco's jobs and your jobs, Susanne, in order to get them to play together actually. But I would just, we only have a few minutes left, so I would like to encourage the audience to post their questions in the chat room. There are many at the moment, so I will go myself. One question to all four of you, basically. I think we can all agree that digital sovereignty, the idea of digital sovereignty, is not enough, basically, to get a strong digital economy in Europe. So the Commission is working on a few proposals, will be published this autumn or maybe next spring. The white book on AI, the data, on the data strategy, on the Digital Services Act. From your point of view, and maybe Susanna, you can start this time. What pieces of the puzzle are still missing from your point of view in order to actually get us that Europe can become a stronger player in this sphere? Just quickly, we only have a few minutes left, so.
I just want to mention one. I think sometimes that's a blind spot. Sometimes because we're so focused in regulating everything, all right. I think we sometimes take away the freedom to innovate, more freely. So I think we have to have a more than looking on each new technology itself. We always have to evaluate the legal framework in general, whether it's still fit for the digital economy, and adjust it, and not only tighten it, but maybe one or the other hand also give a little more space to companies to develop new things.
Eline, what would be your take? Sorry, you have to unmute your.
Sorry. Yeah, if we want at a high level to make our values, to promote them, the priority I think should be to align on to join allies, align on common values. I think it's the former Secretary General of NATO who said, that he called for a technological alliance of democracies to set standards so that it's very difficult for China and Russia to overlook those standards. And also, finally, I think we need to be more self-confident. We're facing deeper industrial policy questions that can be addressed unilaterally. We need to have regulation fix some grounds for some things we want to promote, but we need other things too. And talking about autonomy makes sense when it's about developing sufficient capabilities and talent. We need to increase our skills-based funding. We need efficient collaboration between academia and business. We need to finish that digital single market. We have issues the US doesn't have. We have assets the US doesn't have. Maybe it's not cloud, but other tech areas, and there's room for mutual engagement. So rather than wasting money on technologies and businesses where competition is already stiff and where we're behind, we should build on areas of strength in the technologies where we can really make a difference and seek parity with our allies. So maybe to that. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Eline. René, what would be your take?
I can repeat some of the things Eline just said. So I think the bottom line would be, how can Europe foster innovation, right? And this would include how to create a real good innovation ecosystem, and how should this be supported by, as what Eline said, by collaboration, but also to a good access to money, right? I think we should not try to recreate a Silicon Valley here. I think this is not even possible because it's too big, right, from a European perspective. But we need to find ways how we can try to learn how the Silicon Valley was created and how this ecosystem works there, and at least to take some lessons learned over here to Europe. I think especially when it comes to money, so that startups or people with crazy ideas and really cool ideas can also easily try to execute it, without having the pressure to be ready in 1 or 2 years.
Thank you. Marco, for you were free to answer the first question, but I would have a second one from Matthew Newman from the audience, who's asking what kind of products that, the first products that you might want to publish in 2021, what kind of products that would be?
And maybe I start with the other question. To add to what Eline and René said, they are perfectly right. And I think what Europe lacks is the most important part is the digital ecosystem. We are not able in Europe to set up something like a physical ecosystem like Shenzhen or the Silicon Valley. We cannot even try to copy it. It will not be possible because the Germans wanted to be in Berlin, the French wanted to be in Paris, the Italians wanted to be in Milano, and the Swedish in Stockholm. So the thing is, we are not going to be able to kind of have this focus area where people, money, mind, ideas, all these things get together in a very tense space. And this is I'm a Machiavellian, and Machiavelli says in the end, you need to give opportunity, the opportunity to shine. And we are not giving the opportunity to shine because we cannot create these opportunities. And GAIAX, set this aside, it should tackle the problem, but what we need is a digital ecosystem. We are not going to be able to set it up physically, so we need to do it digitally. And if you can digitally connect Stockholm, Milano, Paris, Madrid, and all the other capitals together, and these ecosystem, these vital ideas, and these great people, then we have a digital ecosystem. And this is the utmost thing we need to do for digital sovereignty and in the digital economy and the years to come, because it's the most important thing for welfare, be it economical or social welfare. To answer the question of Mr. Newman, yes, that is a bad question for me, because if I would have introduced you 20 years or 25 years ago to the Google search engine, and I would say, look, you just put in some words here and then it connects you to somewhere in the internet, you would have looked at that screen and you were only mildly impressed. If I now tell you that at the end of the year, we want to be able to have combined data storages over 4 to 6 providers that can share services in real time with each other, well, that sounds underwhelming from that perspective, but it's a great step forward in interoperability and data movability from the status quo we have right now. And adding up on that, there should be services and applications in the next years to come, for example, in finance, for example, in health, for example, in IoT and manufacturing.
All right. I think we are done now. Time's up. Thanks a lot to all the speakers for the excellent comments. Very, very interesting, very exciting. Thanks a lot to the audience for sticking with us. I hope it was of interest to all of you. I hope you enjoyed it. So all the best to all of you and stay healthy.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Too late to sing now.
Bye-bye.